Hello everybody, and today I'll be doing a Gym Leader Challenge set review of Black Bolt and White Flare. So first off is Amoonguss with the Dangerous Reaction attack for one colorless. It does 30 damage, and then if your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by a special condition, it does 120 more damage. So 150 damage for one energy is pretty solid, especially on a stage 1. And then Grass already has a decent amount of special condition support. There's an Ariados with the Poisonous Nest ability. Once during a turn, you may make both active Pokemon poisoned except any grass Pokemon, so you'll only be poisoning your opponent's active Pokemon. There's Roserade for a grass and a colorless. It has the Assassin's Rose attack, which does 60 damage, and then if your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by a special condition, it also does 60 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. And then Cradily has the Swaying Strangle ability, where your opponent's Pokemon that are affected by special conditions can't retreat. So there's a bit of special condition support going, and Amoonguss adds a pretty powerful attacker to it. Next up is Shelmet with 60 HP and the Exciting Evolution ability, where if you have any Carablast in play, this Pokemon can evolve during the first turn or during the turn it was played. And then that can immediately evolve into Excelgor with 90 HP and the Deck and Cover attack. For 2 colorless, it does 50 damage. The defending Pokemon is now paralyzed and poisoned, and then you shuffle it back and all cards attached to it back in your deck. So if you can loop the Excelgor and Shelmet, you can bench the Shelmet. If you have the Carablast in play, you can immediately evolve into Excelgor, attach 2 energy to it, do 50 damage, paralyze and poison, and then shuffle it back in. And then if you can do that every turn, you can pretty convincingly lock your opponent and prevent them from attacking as long as they don't have any switch cards. And Grass has some other decent control options that can lock your opponent from playing those switch cards. So I think this is a pretty interesting combo, and I'm curious to see what people do with it. Next up is Volcarona with the Scorching Scales ability. Once during your turn, you may discard a basic fire energy card from your hand, and then you leave your opponent's active Pokemon burned. So fire has some decent burn synergy. There just wasn't a great way to make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. The previous way was on a Delphox, which is a stage 2, and it's just once during a turn you can make your opponent's active Pokemon burned. The burn support is Centiskorch with the Overheater ability, where basically whenever your opponent would flip to be cured from burn, it doesn't recover even if it's heads. There's Magmortar and Infernape, both of which increase the amount of damage the burn does. Infernape has the Flaming Fighter ability, where you put 6 damage counters instead of 2, and then the Magmortar straight up adds 3. So the Magmortar and the Infernape on the field at the same time makes it 9 damage counters in between turns, and then if you have Centiskorch in play, they don't heal from it. So you can be doing 9 damage counters between turns, and they don't have a chance to heal. They have to move out of the active. So this could be pretty powerful, especially just how much damage you can do in between turns. Next up is Emboar. This is somewhat of a reprint. It has the Inferno Fandango ability, where as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a fire energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon. It's Rain Dance for fire types. There's a Emboar that was printed with the exact same ability. It just had worse stats because it's from quite a bit ago. It has 150 HP compared to the new one having 180. They both still have 4 retreat cost, but the new one does 120 damage for 4 as opposed to 80 damage for 4. So just generally a better card, does almost the exact same thing, just more damage and more HP. And then we do also get a 70 HP Tepig with this set, which is pretty big if you wanted to play this card, because previously they all had 80 HP or 70 HP and more than 1 retreat cost. So 70 HP, 1 retreat is very solid. Next up is Chandelure. The first attack is Explosive Flame Pillar for 1 fire, it does 50 damage, and then if you have at least 10 basic fire energy in your discard pile, it does 100 more damage. So 150 for 1 energy isn't bad, but you also have to have 10 basic fire energy in your discard pile, which isn't easy to do. The attack that I think could be usable is Burn It All Up, which for 2 fire does 180 damage and you discard all energy from it. So you can kind of go in, blow up whatever's in your opponent's active, and fire has plenty of ways to reaccelerate from the discard pile, so you're not exactly losing the energy. There's Blacksmith to attach 2 fire energy cards from your discard pile to one of your fire Pokemon, and then Magma Basin lets you attach a basic fire energy from your discard pile to one of your bench fire Pokemon, and you put some damage counters on it. So there's ways to loop the energy, and 180 damage for 2 isn't bad. I just don't think the card's great overall. Next up is Tortuga with 100 HP. It is a fossil Pokemon, and it has the Ancient Debris attack for 1 water. It does 30 damage for each item card in your opponent's discard pile. It's a somewhat reprint of Trashalanche from back in the day. 30 times is pretty solid multiplier numbers. The only problem is it's a fossil Pokemon, so you have to get it in play either with the cover fossil, which lets you look at the bottom 7, and you can reveal a Tortuga and put it on your bench, or the antique cover fossil, which is an item. You can play it down as a basic Pokemon. It has 60 HP, and then it is immune to all effects from attacks because of its ability. And then the Caracosta that comes out of this set is pretty solid too. 180 HP and the Mighty Shell ability, where you prevent all damage and effects of attacks done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that have any special energy attached to them. So, especially in the colorless matchup and the dragon matchup, where they more focus on special energy to use their attacks, you can potentially lock them out of the game completely with a Mighty Shell Caracosta setup, and then you can just start spamming Bite Down until you win. Next up is Alomomola with the Gentle Fins ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can put a basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less from your discard pile on your bench. If you attach U-Turn Board to this, this is a free pivot, so whenever your attacker gets knocked out, you can promote this, get a 70 HP or less basic Pokemon from your discard pile back into your bench, and then retreat into your attacker for the turn. There's 2 combos that I thought could be interesting with this. There's a Fion with the Beckon attack. For 1 colorless, you put a supporter card from your discard pile back into your hand. So you can kind of go a more control route with this. Go Fion, use Beckon, put a supporter back into your hand. When the Fion gets knocked out, you promote Alomomola with U-Turn Board, get the Fion back, play your disruptive supporter, retreat into the Fion, attach return, and use Beckon again. So you can loop resources that way. And the other combo was Starmie with the Mysterious Comet. Once during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If you placed any damage counters in this way, discard this Pokemon and all cards attached. So if you do that, and you have a Alomomola in the active, you can use Gentle Fins to get back the Staryu, and then you can just need a way to get back the Starmie to use Mysterious Comet again. And as long as you have ways to get back the Starmie, you can keep using Mysterious Comet, and it's a lot easier to recover 1 Pokemon than it is to recover 2. Next up is Samurott with the Strong Currents ability. Once during your turn, you may switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. If you do, your opponent switches their active with one of their bench Pokemon. And then its attack isn't bad either. Energy Slash for 1 water does 30 damage, and then 50 more damage for each energy attached to it. So the ability is basically an escape rope, but you switch your Pokemon out first, and that's pretty powerful because it means you can't get trapped in the active. And you can also reset your Palafin's Justice Kick every turn. Justice Kick only does damage if the Palafin has moved from the bench to the active spot this turn. So if your opponent tries to trap it up there, you can go Strong Currents to push it out of the active and promote your Free Retreat Cast Form, retreat back into the Palafin, and hit 210 again. And then Samurott, like I said, the attack isn't bad either. If you have 2 energy on it, you can do 130 damage, which is pretty strong baseline damage for what you want to be doing in GLC. Next up is Electric. Not much to say about this. It's a very solid card to see reprinted. It's basically the same card. You can't play the old one in Standard because of the wording difference, but for GLC purposes, it's just a reprint. There's also a better Dynamo. The one that is currently the best is a 30 HP with Free Retreat. This one just has 40 HP with Free Retreat, so it's just better. Electric does have the Dynamo ability. Once during your turn, you may attach a Lightning Energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So Lightning has 2 of these. There's a Flaffy that has the exact same ability, and the Electric previously was somewhat difficult for people to get. I'm excited to see it reprinted, and I'm curious how many more doors this will open up for newer players. Next up is Galvantula. It has the discharge attack for 1 lightning. It does 50 damage, and then you discard all lightning energy from it, and it does 50 damage for each card discarded in this way. I think this could be a powerful one-shot option to evolve from the Jolting Charge Joltik, where you search your deck for up to 2 basic grass energy and up to 2 basic lightning energy, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. So if they don't KO the Joltik, and they gust up one of the attackers that you just put your energy on, you can promote the Joltik, Galvantula, attach for turn, and discharge for 100 damage, 200 damage in the water matchup, maybe more if you can get another energy on there. 150 for 3 isn't terrible, especially on a stage 1. The other Galvantula that typically sees play is the Double Thread. It is a dual type Galvantula, and it has the Double Thread attack. For 1 colorless, it does 30 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon, and you apply weakness and resistance. So it's just some spread. It's not too powerful because 30 damage with weakness is 60, and most basics that people are going to be playing have 70 HP. So I like the idea of having a one-shot option that you can just evolve from your supporter. Next up is Reuniclus with the Cellular Awakening for 1 colorless. For each of your benched Pokemon, search your deck for a card that evolves from that Pokemon and put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it, then shuffle your deck. So it's kind of like a whole board Technical Machine Evolution, and then Evo Lariat for 1 colorless does 40 damage, plus 40 for each evolution Pokemon you have in play. Psychic has a decent amount of evolution-focused support. There's Malamar and Xatu, both of which provide energy acceleration, and then there's the Kirlia, which provides draw, and the Gallade, which just gets your support every turn, very good. And then you can use Dimension Valley to actually use the Evo Lariat attack for free. I don't know how I feel about the Cellular Awakening, because that kind of forces you to work on a stage 2 to get set up with your whole board, and then they can kind of just gust around it. But you do have the Evo Lariat attack, which I think is pretty solid if you get it set up. Like I said, Psychic has a decent amount of evolution support, so you can just do whatever you want with Psychic. Next up is Elgium with the Slight Shift attack. For 1 Psychic, you move an energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon to another one of their Pokemon. This can be super powerful, because if you can Gust Trap something in the active that they can't move, you can go Slight Shift to move energy off of their attackers to their support Pokemon that they can't attack with. So they get stuck having energy where they don't want it, and then you can kind of lock them out of the game that way. You can use Team Flare Grunt to discard an energy off their active, and if you move an energy off their active, you just remove 2 energy in 1 turn. If you attach Handheld Fan, you could potentially remove 3 energy in 1 turn, again moving it somewhere that they don't want it. Garbodor with the Garbotoxin, you can ability lock them, and then Gothitelle, you can manipulate their top deck, so you can really lock them out of the game and move their energy where they don't want it, force them to maybe play weird lines to retreat, to have access to the energy again, but then they have to deal with not having what they want to top deck and ability lock the whole time. So, speaking of just more control, there's Gothitelle with the Twisted Future ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you can have your opponent shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 3 cards. So, already great start. Limiting your opponent down to 3 cards is super oppressive. And then Synchro Shot for a Psychic and a colorless does 90 damage. And then if you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, it does 90 more. So 180 on a stage 2 for 2 energy is pretty solid, especially when you can limit them down to a 3-card hand. You can continue the just oppression with Garbodor ability lock. Delinquent can force them to discard the last 3 cards in their hand that they have after the shuffle draw. And then Banette can force them to shuffle those last 3 cards back into their deck with Cursed Words. And then you can just throw a Float Stone on the Gothitelle and make it your pivot. So whenever they knock something out, you promote the Gothitelle, Twisted Future, and then retreat into the Banette and Cursed Words to make them put those 3 cards back into the deck. Next up is Frillish with the Sea Shadows attack. For 1 Psychic, it does 20 damage, and during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. So, just item lock. I've already mentioned Psychic control is pretty solid. Team Flare Grunt can limit their energy, Garbodor can item lock them, Gothitelle can manipulate their top deck. If they're getting item locked on top of ability lock, on top of energy removal, on top of potential top deck manipulation, there's just not a whole lot they can do as long as you play your cards right. You can completely lock someone out of the game. Archeops has the Primal Wings ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may choose one of your opponent's evolved Pokemon and devolve it by putting the highest stage evolution card back into your opponent's hand. So this is super solid. It is a fossil Pokemon, and fighting is struggling with draw power enough as it is. So you'd have to find a way to get the fossil into play, or just the Archeops with Maxie's Hidden Ball trick, I believe. But if you can get it into play, it's super solid. You can attach a U-turn board because it does only have one retreat and make this your pivot. So you promote it after something gets knocked out. You can devolve one of their Pokemon, and if you're playing something like the Hitmon combo deck and you just finishing comboed and did 60 to everything, you can promote it, knock something down to where it has less than 60 HP after you devolve it, take a free KO that way, and then you can continue your turn from there with just one extra card in hand. You can also put it back into their hand and then Iono it away, so it goes to the bottom of the deck and they have to re-find it if they want to play the evolution again. And you can also pair it with a Technical Machine Devolution to put a Stage 2 that evolved from a Stage 1 all the way back down to a basic in one turn. And that can be powerful with the Team Rocket's Tyranitar, which during Pokemon Checkup, if it's in the active, puts 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's basic Pokemon. So if they have a Stage 2 that you haven't really been able to deal with, you can go Archeops, put it down to a Stage 1, Iono, and then retreat into Tyranitar, attach Technical Machine Devolution, devolve it back to a basic, and get 2 damage counters on it. Next up is Terrakion with the Retaliate attack for fighting in a colorless. It does 50 damage, and if any of your Pokemon are knocked out by damage from an attack during your opponent's last turn, it does 80 more damage. So 130, again, pretty solid numbers, kind of what you want to be hitting in GLC, and 2 energy isn't even that difficult for fighting to do. There's Garganacl with the Energizing Rock Salt, where once during your turn you may attach a basic fighting energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, and then heal 30 damage from it, and then Raihan can also attach a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Pokemon, and then you search your deck for any card and put it in your hand. So both of those work quite nicely. You can bench Terrakion, Raihan, or Garganacl to it, attach for turn, and you're swinging 130. Fighting has plenty of ways to increase that damage, and it's just a pretty solid revenge attacker. Next up is Conkeldurr with the Craftsmanship ability. This Pokemon gets 40 more HP for each fighting energy attached to it. And then Swing Around for a fighting in 3 colorless, does 100 damage, and then you flip 2 coins and it does 50 more for each heads. If you pay for the Swing Around attack, you're already at 300 health because it'll boost it by 160 for 4 total fighting energy attached to it. If you attach Luxurious Cape, you can bump that up to 400 health, and then Garganacl with the Energizing Rock Salt again, you can accelerate another energy to give it 40 more health and heal 30 damage in the process, so you can basically give it plus 70 HP if it has any damage on it. Next up is Scolipede with the Poison Point ability, where if this Pokemon is in the active spot and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, the attacking Pokemon is now poisoned. And then Venoshock for a Darkness and a Colorless does 90 damage, and then 90 more if your opponent's active Pokemon is poisoned. So if they hit you, they get poisoned, and then you do 180 damage back. You can use Luxurious Cape to add a bit more survivability, bumping it up to 260 HP. And then Brute Bonnet is just an easy way to poison both actives, so you guaranteed get that 180 damage for just 2 energy. Next up is Crocodile with the Tighten Up attack for Darkness and a Colorless. It does 60 damage, and your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. And then for 2 Darkness and a Colorless, Cursed Slug does 120 damage. And then if your opponent has 3 or fewer cards in their hand, this attack does 120 more damage. So 240 if your opponent has 3 or fewer cards in hand isn't terrible, does cost 3 energy. But the Tighten Up attack can be very oppressive on your opponent. They do get to choose what they discard, but if they only have 2 or 3 cards in hand, they're either getting rid of their entire hand or getting to keep 1. And if they have a smaller hand and they want to keep most of the cards, forces them into some difficult situations. You can pair it with Xerosic's Machinations. Your opponent discards cards from their hand until they have 3 in hand, so then Tighten Up will put them down to 1. Airy lets you discard 2 items so that they have less choices to easily discard off of the Tighten Up, and then Red Card can put them down to 4 off of an item, so you can go Red Card and then either Airy or Xerosic to put them down to 3, or discard any items that they may have gotten off the Red Card, and then Tighten Up can potentially put them down to a 0 card hand. Next up is Mandibuzz with the Hunt for Prey ability. Once during your turn, you may have your opponent reveal their hand, choose a basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less you find there, and put it onto the bench. This gives you hand knowledge, which is very powerful in control. Knowing what resources your opponent has access to makes it a lot easier to play the game and play around what they could potentially do. You can pair this with Airy so that you know actually when to play your Airy, because playing an Airy for no effect really sucks. So if you hunt for prey and you're like, oh, they have 2 items that they might want to play next turn, then you know you can play your Airy for a full effect. There is a Zubat with the revealing Echo, where once during a turn, if this Pokemon is in the active, you may have your opponent reveal their hand, which a Sableye Darkness Control deck already plays. I don't know if Mandibuzz will replace it, but Zubat does take up the retreating slot, and it also forces you to only put it in the active if they take a KO. So if they're holding stuff and not taking KOs, you are still getting to play your game as control, but you won't have as much hand knowledge. And then you also know when to red card them. If you hunt for prey, see their hand isn't the greatest, you know, okay, I can just keep on doing what I'm doing. They don't have much. Or you see, oh, they have good cards, I'll red card, and then force them back down to a 4-card hand. Next up is Scrafty with the Rascal attack. For 2 darkness, you flip a coin for each darkness Pokemon you have in play, and this attack does 60 damage for each heads. So you can use Glimwood Tangle to reflip, and if you have a full board of darkness Pokemon, you can do up to 360 damage. You can use Zoroark's Phantom Transformation to use the Scrafty twice, potentially 3 times if you can get the Scraggy back down after they KO it. They'll go KO Scrafty, you can Phantom Transformation it back into play, maybe Night Stretcher or Rescue Stretcher to put the Scraggy back into play, Rascal attack, and then you can just recover the Scrafty and Rascal attack for a 3rd time. I don't think it's anything crazy, but if you want to flip coins, this is a pretty solid attacker to do it with. Next up is Zoroark. This is kind of like 2 other Zoroarks stapled together. There's the Mind Jack attack for 1 darkness. It does 30 damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. And then Foul Play for 3 colorless. You choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it as this attack. So the 2 Zoroarks have attacks of the same name. There's Mind Jack Zoroark and Foul Play Zoroark. Both of them see some play, but it's kind of split. So I'm curious if the Zoroark that has both of their attacks will take precedent over them, or if the other 2 will continue to be played. And then the Ignition Energy, which I'll talk about on a later slide, and Triple Acceleration Energy both provide 3 colorless with just 1 attachment. So Foul Play is really just 1 attachment away if you can find Ignition or Triple Acceleration. So there were a whole bunch of trainer reprints in this set. There's Pokegear 3.0, which is played in almost every deck. It's a very solid card. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You may reveal a supporter card you find there and put it into your hand. Shuffle the other cards back into your deck. Tool Scrapper isn't played as much because Field Blower is just better, but you choose up to 2 Pokemon tools attached to Pokemon, yours and your opponent's, and discard them. Air Balloon, again, doesn't see much play because Floatstone is just better, but for newer players, this is a pretty solid retreat reducing option. The retreat cost of the Pokemon this card is attached to is 2 less. And then Prism Energy provides 1 colorless, but if it's attached to a basic Pokemon, it provides every type of energy, but only 1 energy at a time. It's pretty powerful in Dragon, and in fighting it can be used on Okidogi. Next up is Hilda. Search your deck for 1 evolution Pokemon and 1 energy card, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. In Colorless plays so many different special energy cards that you can really get whatever you want. And then it can also get your Bibarel with the Industrious Incisors. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 5 in your hand. So you can go Hilda for a Bibarel and a special energy, attach the special energy to thin down your hand a little bit, and then you can Industrious Incisors to draw some cards. And then in Dragon, it can get you your Garchomp or your Gabite, and then double Dragon Energy, which is just probably one of the most broken special energies ever printed, and it's super, super good in Dragon, and just having another out to it is very solid. So finally is Ignition Energy. I mentioned it earlier. So if this card is attached to one of your Pokemon, you discard it at the end of the turn. It provides 1 colorless while attached to a Pokemon, but if it's attached to an evolution Pokemon, it provides 3 colorless instead. So there is a card similar to it, Triple Acceleration Energy, which can only be attached to an evolution Pokemon, and you still discard it at the end of your turn, and it provides 3 colorless while it's attached to an evolution Pokemon. So ignition energy is a bit different than triple acceleration, but I think it's just a strict upgrade because ignition energy can be attached to a Snorlax, whereas triple acceleration can't. And ignition energy will only provide one, but at least you can use it on the Snorlax. So if you're bricking and you only have triple acceleration, you can still attack with the Snorlax as opposed to just not being able to use it and having a dead card in your hand. So thanks for watching. I'll leave a couple links in the description below. The official Gym Leader Challenge website, which is a great place to go for beginners. They have great beginner deck lists. And then the Cardboard Warriors website has a whole bunch of deck lists made by community members. It's a very solid website, and they also have a deck builder if you wanted to build your own deck lists. Thanks. Have a good night.